huge regard. And Pramod leads the finance function for Arvind Lifestyle, and that's one of the largest divisions out there. Is that right, Pramod, or is there something more to be added down there?
No, we just that we are no more like Arvind Limited is a group company now because we demerged, and in fact that's what sort of brought me in. So we demerged around 2 years back, and therefore we are an independently listed company, Arvind Fashion. So Arvind Lifestyle brand is a subsidiary, but yeah, those are all semantics. So we are now a pure play retail and apparels business, whereas Arvind Limited is the denim and garmenting and that business. So other than that.
So, Pramod, what we're doing at the CEO Lounge these days, we try to have a lot of interactions with the leaders. And the idea of all these interactions is to bring out the best corporate practices, which the leaders are executing, and probably put those practices and those learnings in a paper and share it across to our large CXO database that we have at CEO Lounge. And then we have partners like ISS who has come and backing us with this particular project. And this then also goes to a larger database of ISS also. And we actually have been thinking and deliberating, and we felt that how the role of a CFO has been evolving significantly. They're no more a financial custodian as per se, but they work very, very closely with the CEOs today to bring out the new strategies, what next for the company, the corporate growth, and so on. And in fact, you today look at them also bringing out a digital transformation and organizational transformation in a very, very big piece. So we thought that today we'll have a conversation with you just to understand your perspective on how the CFO role is changing, and what kind of a transformation are they really getting into, and moving forward, say 10 years from now, what do you see a CFO playing a role as, and how that role being completely transformed? So, there were a few questions which was there on my mind and few at Aksh's mind, and you can just jump in and just share your vision generally. That was the idea. And so, maybe, Aksh, sorry.
So Deepak, I mean, if I may just come in, so a lot of these questions are, I'm sure, Pramod, you would have answered umpteenth number of times. I mean, these are all
of us,
very rhetoric.
Every role has always been evolving. It's just the context, that varies.
Yeah, and, so these are all rhetoric questions.
Aksh, you have yourself, made the move. So,
I know. So absolutely. So I think I of course, have a perspective. What it feels to be the CFO and what it means to be, behind those chairs. I think the bit that would be very interesting, Pramod, to understand from you is one. I think, where do you see the big shift between the pre-COVID and post-COVID era? From a role perspective of a CFO, right? So pre-COVID, there were certain expectations, there were certain things, and CFOs were driving. Then also, they were partnering with the CEOs, and they were trying to create value. Now post-COVID, right? What do you think are the biggest changes that you think, if at all, that have taken place? And also, I think it'll be very interesting to get a little bit of context of your industry. I mean, retail is getting badgered, the biggest. I mean, other than travel and tourism.
Not the entire retail.
Yeah,
our part of the retail.
Correct. So give us a little bit of a perspective there, and give us a little bit of a pre and post COVID taste. That'll be really, really helpful.
Yeah. So see, as we sort of right in the beginning said, the core of the role. I mean, the most successful CFOs, whether you look at let's say Mr. Gupta, who partnered with Sunil Bharti Mittal from the days of its launch. So therefore, obviously, the people who have been successful CFOs, Akhil Gupta. So the people who have been successful CFOs, they have always been business partners.
Right.
So there is no successful CFO, and within that, some of the CFOs, like any other function, some of the CMOs move into a CEO role, some of the CFOs move into the CEO role, sometimes, not so often, CHROs also move into CEO roles. So therefore,
CHROs can never move into the CFO's role.
uh, well,
CHROs
but
can never move into
CFOs,
finance role.
but CFOs have been able to move into CHRO roles. But anyways, so
Yeah.
therefore the context remains that whether as a CFO, are you strategic in nature? Are you business partnering in nature? Are you going beyond the bookkeeping, etc., etc.? And then are you a good leader, a people leader? Are you collaborating horizontally and vertically? Are you keeping an eye on the external world also? All of those things remain. So it's just the context that has changed a little bit. And any big event like the pandemic, that shifts the orientation that the business needs to have. And therefore, if the orientation of the business needs to change, then every functional leader has to then work with the CEO to see that, okay, fine, how can I contribute into that change for the organization, and what changes do I need to make in my function itself? So that's the way one would look at it. So obviously, one of the biggest thing that has happened with this pandemic is the, especially for our, so we are a retail company, we are a brands company, however.
Right.
Therefore, for me, whether it is a physical retail or it's an online retail, both are my channels. So let's say a key difference between an organization like ours versus, let's say, a lifestyle would be that lifestyle is a retail organization. It gets brands from a multiple set of people, and then people have to come and buy. Whereas I am a brands company, I can sell it through e-com, I can sell it through lifestyle shopper stop, I can sell it through my own stores, or I can sell it through the MBOs, the multi-brand outlets, etc. So therefore, each of them are a channel. But the thing that happens is that there is a part of the channel where you have made very significant investments.
Correct.
In terms of the capex, in terms of the lease commitments, in terms of the people, etc. And even with people like lifestyle and shopper stop, where you may not have made commitments onto the physical hard assets and the people assets, but you have certain commitments around the business and the minimum guarantees and all of that. So therefore, while your throughput through the channels which have already been committed investments and people is going down, whereas your throughput in the channels where they will come and seek their margins or their pound of flesh or whatever you call it, that is going up. So therefore, how do you redo your entire channel strategy? Number one. Number two, let's say, and I'm straight away I'm relating it to my business so that it answers both the questions of, because that makes it real. Otherwise, it's a very theoretical kind of a thing. As such, I have worked in pharma, I have worked in FMCG, I have worked in Microsoft, I have worked in a startup. So I can, we can, whichever organization I would be in, I would give the context of that organization. But right now, since I'm in apparel, let me just give the context of my apparel. So therefore, one is that how do I then look at my investments that are already made and which are sunk cost, or they are my pre-existing commitments, and whereas my channel shifts are happening. That's number one. Number two, while obviously there is a very significant move that has happened from offline to online for the time being, but let's say like Akshay, you would know that whenever you do a launch, there is a first channel fill that happens, and then later on some of the existing people will react, and therefore the final equilibrium that you will reach will be somewhere between what it was and what it is right now. So therefore, while there is a sudden jump in the online, but quite a good chance that, like, if example, for one of my brands, I was looking at the numbers yesterday only, my last full year contribution of online was 23%. And this year, full year projected is 35%. But when I look at my Q1 and Q2, the contribution was 55%.
Yes.
So from 23% to 55%, there is a jump. But if I either not take into account that my, even going forward, that 23, 24 will reach 24, 34, 35, then I am not putting my energies behind long-term transformation of my channels. But at the same time, if I take a here and now view and say my 55% has become online, therefore shut down all the stores, then I'm again negatively impacting the business.
Correct.
But while this transformation has happened, and then you are giving higher margins, which are variable in nature to the e-com players, whereas your fixed cost on your physical infrastructure is continuing in both people, lease, and capex.
Yeah.
How do you deal with that temporary situation? What communication do you do? What short-term cost measures you drive? How do you then think about the longer term capital allocation? All of these become very, very real issues.
Right. But are you also able to decouple the two? Are you also able to decouple the online versus offline, given the fact that online will get impacted, will get the brand equity or the value from the promotions which takes place on the in the brick and mortar type of business. So people will buy, certain brands, let's say LVMH, because not only it's an online thing, because you see those unique LVMH stores, and you see and you cross by. I mean, the footfall in LVMH may or may not be there from that perspective, but yes, I mean, online it will. I mean, probably LVMH is a wrong example because it's very expensive. But let's say maybe any other brand. So are you able to decouple the two completely?
Conceptually, you would think about it, but when you are looking at thousands of your stores, across,
Correct.
whatever your conceptual model you may have in mind,
Right.
when you start applying it, it's a continuum. When we think of models, it's a model 1, model 2, model 3. But
right.
when you as you would have seen, when you go into the field, it's a continuum.
Correct.
There are stores which are pure experience centers.
Correct.
There are stores which are virtually pure fulfillment centers.
Correct.
And there is a whole shades of, one black to white. It is not one sharp line.
Right.
The
Right.
shades
No,
of gray
exactly.
that happens. So therefore, within that, then we ended up doing a little bit of bucketing. We basically said that so basically we first of all, we put a brand, which are my strong brands, which are not so strong brands, and therefore brands which are not very strong, and therefore if their footfall, etc., comes down, and therefore they are unlikely to make money, then can I, instead of exclusive stores, can I make them combined stores with some of my other brands, where I give some space to those brands in my combined stores? Or I say that these are the brands where probably exclusive stores will not make sense. Therefore, I'll completely pivot to an online only. And with some presence in, let's say, key account stores and large format stores, etc. But the biggest transformation that we had to do actually was that how do I bring in Omni?
Correct.
Omni has got, as you would know, we have that whole thing around discovery of the inventory, visibility of the inventory, etc., etc. The marketing, how people are able to experience you, all of that. But the issue that happens is that your inventory visibility, your systems in the front end stores are different from your systems in the warehouse.
Right.
And plus, if you also want to make the inventory available with your offline channel, which is also reeling in stocks, if you want to therefore make the inventory in your stores, in your warehouse, plus the store's inventory which is in transit, and plus the inventory with your key distributors, if you want to make that inventory visible to the customer or potential customer so that they can order online.
Right.
And even after they order, you are able to decide where do you want to fulfill from, and then fulfill it.
Right.
So digital transformation is not about AI, etc. I mean, it is about AI and ML and all of that, but the whole fulfillment, the discovery of inventory, one view of inventory, the fulfillment engine, the prioritization, and that's where I think the rubber hits the road.
Right.
Because the AI and ML, you can go and get it done. There are enough and more, intelligent people that are available. You feed them data, and of course, even the data you got to clean and all of that. But how do you do the fulfillment?
Right.
How do you do the incentivization? How do you do the REM structure?
Right.
Around this? So that becomes a very, very important one.
Right.
And
so what do you think, Pramod, then would be your learnings from this? So have you like I do this, very often. When you are reflecting upon
Hmm.
the state of affairs or the situations or the business events that have gone by, and
Hmm.
how the business cycle has went up and down in during this pandemic. Have you, for yourself as a CFO, thought of certain or taken a revision in your rule book to say
Yeah,
these are
yeah,
the things I will do
yeah,
and
yeah.
these are the things I will never do? So is there some reflection of those sorts?
Honestly, this is a good question, which I think I'll think about. but essentially, what I think one of the things that I have worked all my life in a cash-rich MNCs,
Okay, so then
and
yeah, okay,
even during the time I have worked in a startup, just before I joined them, they had raised some 700 crore.
okay,
So
okay,
they were like
excellent.
sitting on cash.
So liquidity has never
And
been an issue, right?
so liquidity, I have not thought about liquidity.
Okay.
And I have all my life I have been used to bankers chasing me for this business or that business. For the first time in my life, I have chased bankers, and I know and how.
Yeah. It's so unique,
So
right? With the banks, they only give to you the credit when you don't need.
yeah. But that's the way
Correct.
that's the way it is. I mean, because for them, ultimately, and that is where I went through a range of emotions. That they are fair with their friends and all of that. But when you think about it, all of us are custodians of the shareholders and other stakeholders,
Correct.
and banks even more so. They
Right.
are also the custodians of the deposit holders' money.
Right.
So therefore, if you and I were in their place, would I not put in my risk management?
Of course. Of course. Of course. And now
And
with all this,
hmm,
after the Yes Bank fiasco and
yeah,
DHFL and whatnot, there's
yeah,
more and more, activism taking place.
yeah. And then with this kind of a scenario, if I am a bank and I think about my security of my money, I either I have people who are going to run away with my money, or there are people who have the best of the intentions, but they are trying to protect a business model which is unlikely to
Correct.
stand,
Correct.
or they may even be able to protect, but they are fragile. And the fact
Right.
is that in Arvind Fashions, and because anybody who looks at our balance sheet can see that, when we demerged, and immediately after, I mean, just before demerger, we had grown very, very rapidly.
Right.
And when you grow very rapidly, you sometimes collect a few growth debts,
Of
quote
course.
unquote. And while people look at your P&L, etc., but the growth debts go and sit in your balance sheet.
Correct.
So if you look at our last 15 quarters, the 15 months or 5 quarters of results, we have been like clearing some of those things. So therefore, when you enter this kind of a pandemic with a sector which is impacted negatively, and you are now an independent company with a stressed balance sheet, then you really understand what does cash mean. So I think the biggest pivot I have made in my mind is we have always known as CFOs that revenue is vanity and profit is a concept, and
Vanity.
cash is reality.
Correct.
So, but what exactly does it mean? I mean, I have really so when the pandemic was about, when things were getting serious, around 12th, 13th of the March, when things were getting serious, that's
Correct.
when I basically said I will focus on cash.
Right.
And then from around 16th of the March till today, I have had every single day, and now Saturdays I have stopped, but otherwise every single day I would have a cash meeting in the morning for 30 to
Right.
45 minutes.
Excellent.
So
Excellent.
if I was to look at between then and now, if I was to look at a total of 200 odd days, and if I take the Sundays and Saturdays out, and I would have had that meeting on 95% of the days,
Right.
including the days on which I had a board meeting.
Very interesting. Yes. Cash is
So
king, right?
cash is king, and how and
Correct.
how. So
Correct.
I have understood the implications of cash, and then nothing has prepared me better to understand how does the cash flow work, how do each of the, not only banking sector as a whole works, but what is the psyche of each of the banks? How is ICICI Bank different from HDFC, is different from Yes Bank to the Kotak Bank, etc. Therefore, cash and its implications on the supplier relationship, on a customer relationship. When should you prioritize your yield? When should you prioritize just sheer bank balance? How do you find a balance between, let's say, meeting your, like there are times when I had to prioritize saying that, fine, I know that I am overdue, but between two people, one I am overdue by X and one I am overdue by 10X, but I need somebody, my next transaction needs to happen from somebody with whom I am overdue by X. So even though I feel bad about the fact that I'm overdue with somebody else on 10X, I'm sorry, I cannot prioritize that guy. So how do I manage my emotions of, because as an individual, I have a very deep sense of fairness.
Right.
So that's the space I work from.
Right.
But how do I just sort of find a balance between the fairness and the need of the hour?
Right.
And then how do I communicate and deal with people with whom I am being unfair? Because I have been very, very open with a lot of people saying that, buddy, I know I'm very, very late. I will make up for you.
Yeah.
But here is the thing, and I need your help. And funnily, people appreciate that. People really appreciate that. And therefore, and then other thing I had never done was to get into the equity market transactions. And you probably did your Nasdaq listing much earlier in your career, but we went for a rights issue. Then we got into a strategic tie-up with Flipkart. So therefore, you are trying to preserve cash. You are trying to do some of those deals, and when you are trying to do those deals, all of these people will have. So we did our Flipkart deal in the month of July at the but when you announce a deal in the month of July, you have had to do the pre-work during the peak of the COVID time.
Correct.
So how do you tell the story of your survival versus the temporary issue versus this thing? Of course, I mean it's a team sport. I mean nobody will believe only because you are saying something. Therefore, your CEO has to come into the picture. Your business heads have to come into the picture. But you have to syndicate. You know that. So how do you syndicate that dialogue?
Right.
Is the thing that becomes important. And then how do you keep the dialogue going with the banks, with your vendors, with your team members? I mean, I had to let go of a very large part of my team.
Right. What sort of percentage is that? Would that be?
I had to let go of around 20%.
Wow.
Of my team. And then therefore on one hand, and then we had to implement very drastic salary cuts. And then therefore, in a situation where your work is increasing, they have seen some of their colleagues going. There is uncertainty and there is salary cut.
Correct.
And then you are getting badgered by the banks and vendors and customers.
Correct.
How do you keep the motivation going? And how do you
That's why they call it a pandemic, right?
That's
You're getting it from all the corners.
Yeah, you get it from all the corners. And then the difference, and then I think if I was to therefore look at it, and that's the thing that I must say is a shared understanding. When I came in, then the whole ethos of the company was saying that make sure that you don't lose a single rupee of revenue, which itself was a bit alien to me, because I have always believed that there has to be you have to do operations at a cost and not at any cost.
Correct.
That has been my
growth versus growth.
Yeah, that has been my motto all along. But I walked into a company where growth was an end in itself.
Right.
So that has to change anyways. And therefore, I had initiated some of those dialogues. So therefore, when I look back, minus the pain that the pandemic caused, I'm not too sure whether it was a blessing. I would have preferred to have a pandemic, maybe not as severe, but a little bit of jolt, I think our organization could have done with. But yeah. So the upshot of this is that I think the whole organization is now focused on cash of course, growth and profitability, growth remains a narrative, but we are all very, very, clear about the quality of growth and, the layering of growth and the growth versus profitability and the cash, etc. So those dialogues are very, very, and right now what we are sort of working on is to, okay, now crisis and the pandemic is behind us. Now, how do we go to the next level? And now how do we look at prioritization of some investments? How do we do the capital allocation? What are the areas where cash may still be stuck, and therefore take your losses whatever you need to, and release that cash and use that cash for something better, etc., etc. So therefore I think those are the discussions that we are having. But yeah, very, very intense discussions. It has been a
very interesting. Yeah. I mean, good to hear from you. On that front. I mean, on your experience, especially on cash. And we have been, anticipating this for a while now. I mean, maybe in some ways we got a little bit of a head start because this pandemic started off in China much ahead. So China has been really under pressure in the group, from a cash standpoint, all of a sudden. So even before we hit March, I mean, we had put all our things in order to get the debtors and the credit lines and the arrangements and financial restructuring and everything was done. So and we are again, we've been a fair bit of a cash cow, and we declare a significant dividend every year. And of course, that was but a no-brainer for anyone to defer the dividends this year. So we did not, and held back the money, completed the divestments. So while all we've been focused on cash in the same way, we probably never we were lucky enough that we didn't get to that level that we had to really worry about it. So and actually also the situation in our country is very different vis-a-vis other countries. I mean, there's a lot of helicopter money coming into so many other countries. There is no such money that comes in India. Our friends in China, Hong Kong, Singapore, Australia, they are, you won't believe, Pramod, this probably, I think last month, so last month actually at a regional level, APAC level, I've been in the APAC, I was the CFO there, and so I still equally involved in many ways. So it was last month we did a margin which we've never done in last 5 years, and which is at the peak of pandemic. So because there's so much money coming in from the governments of multiple countries. So different as I say, we are all in the same storm but in different boats.
Yeah. No, like 2008 when GFC I had just joined Novartis, and oh boy, I made money at that time.
Yeah, I'm sure, absolutely.
Because, that time, and in a way I was a bit prescient, so I managed to be. I mean, it's you throw a dart and sometimes sticks. I had little before the stock markets hit the peak, I had zeroized my entire equity investment.
Wow.
And I had kept cash. At some point in time, I put all of that into the debt funds.
Okay. Yeah.
And guess what? The interest rates came down.
Right. Perfect.
So I actually made pretty good money. And
perfect time, exiting at the right time, and then again investing in debt.
And in mid 2008, I had moved from DHL to Novartis.
Okay.
And guess what? DHL went through a period of salary freeze and salary cut. And in Novartis, we actually gave pretty good increments.
Right. Perfect. Yeah, super.
So therefore, but life had said that before you sort of retire or die, you must have your own lessons.
Very interesting.
So I have seen crisis from both sides.
Right.
And long back, Bill Gates said that success is a lousy teacher. Correct. So therefore, but it has been a huge learning. It's a huge learning. I think it has brought the teams together, both at the leadership peer level, and you know that, and wherever you go, there are obviously you are all colleagues, but there are people you relate to better, there are people you relate to less, etc., etc., and there are people with whom you have an outright difference of opinion, virtually on everything. uh,
Right.
but but these are the times when organizations either sort of fall apart, because if
Correct.
those differences become dysfunctional,
Correct.
then they fall apart, or people find a way to sort of come together. Fortunately for us, partly because we were in such a crisis that we had no room to sort of not come together.
Correct.
But as
Correct.
an organization, we have come together both at my peer level. When I look at my own finance function, because over here in addition to finance, I also handle the supply chain and IT. And when
Right.
I look at the entire team coming together, the way the organization has come together is not even
I'm sure. I'm sure.
so.
Super, super. I just have one last question. I know we've
Hmm.
kind of running, we've already exceeded the time. Just one last question, Pramod, and again, maybe a little bit rhetorical, and you would have answered it
Hmm.
1,000 times earlier. This one is where do you see the future? I mean, between retail and e-commerce, as in the old brick and mortar business and the e-commerce, and the pundits are saying, it's only going to be e-commerce and digital world, and brick
Uh,
and mortar is going to
yeah, yeah.
completely.
Do you know? Do you? I mean, I don't know whether you are aware or not. Some few decades back, when electronic, music was coming on, people had said that acoustic guitar will die.
Yeah, yeah. I
It
have
will.
a one in my back,
Hmm.
which I bought in this e-commerce.
Okay. And so will violin, and so will like sitar, etc., etc. It doesn't happen that way. If you
Mm,
really see, whether
correct.
globally or even in India, even Flipkart and Amazon, Walmart, Flipkart in India is e-com, but the
Yeah,
whole reason why Walmart bought Flipkart is that now Omni is the way forward.
right.
The share of, if you really think of e-com as a channel of distribution or
Correct.
a channel of engagement with customers or consumers, there will always be a role for e-com, there will always be a role for physical retail, and that role will vary from place to place. Like
Right.
mobile, which is a very standard technology driven product, where your chances of obsolescence are very high. The models come in very, very fast pace. There, the cost of obsolescence goes up significantly when you have physical storage across multiple, nooks and corners. And so you gain significant amount of economies by having the entire storage at a concentrated locations,
Right.
and then manufacture and supply, manage the supply chain through e-commerce.
Correct. Correct.
But when you look at, I don't know, medicine, again, e-commerce should increase, etc. In apparel, on one hand, yes, you have huge amount of benefit of supply chain agglomeration, because again, if styles change and every season there is a new style, even if the same style, you will find that some, if you look at a shirt, and then the kinds of shirts you can have, and then you color, and the patterns and the buttons and embellishments, etc., etc., you have a huge set of styles. And therefore you will always run at a physical location, some which will you will run out of stocks, and somewhere you will be
Yeah.
left with stocks. So therefore, on one hand, there are, and I'm again talking about my physical retail again, apparel retail. So on one hand, there is a significant efficiency you can get through e-commerce.
Right. Right.
At the same time, apparel purchase is a high involvement purchase, where it's also an occasion for friends and families to go together and make an occasion out of it.
Correct. Correct. Correct.
So therefore, and then there are people, it goes without saying that e-com will have a penetration. There are people who are comfortable, there are people who are not comfortable, all of that. So e-com penetration will increase. I think there is a secular increase in the e-com penetration that will happen. But I think the Omni is the way where you
Right.
should be able to have your stores, your total inventory available to be seen by people, where
Right.
even if people are going to a particular store, if you don't find, apart from the physical stocks that you are having, you should be able to sort of look at the rest. If you are not finding your exact ones, you should have the ability in the store to be able to order from anywhere. You should be
Right.
able to order online and pick up from your store, or order
Right.
online and have the store people deliver in the catchment area, and so on
Right.
and so forth. There are innovations that are happening. We have ourselves done that, where a store is available to you. Like, if you are, let's say, you are in which part of Mumbai? I guess you are in Mumbai, right?
No, not in Mumbai. I'm right now in Gurgaon,
Oh,
but
okay.
our office business. I keep coming into Mumbai like every 2 weeks, 3 weeks.
Hmm. So which part of Gurgaon are you in?
On the golf course road, stay in Park Place.
Okay, you're in Park Place. Okay. I do have
Right.
a few friends, but that we will come to there later.
Yeah.
Okay, so coming back, so let's say if you are in, say, Gurgaon, if you are in the golf course road area where you have got a showroom, so that showroom will have a catchment area. So
Correct.
therefore, anybody staying in that area wants to experience what is available in my nearby store. Apart
Correct.
from getting store location, they can also get into the stocks of that store,
Correct.
and then virtually pre-select what do they want to see, and then go and see over there and make a quick buy and do this thing. Or you are able to order, let's say you are in ambience mall, you are going to
Right.
an ambience mall, you don't want to go inside, you can do an ordering, and then nearer to the time you can tell people that come and hand it over to me in the parking place,
Right.
or I am
Right.
I am at the gate, please come and hand over to me. So
Correct.
all
Correct.
kinds of innovations that are there, where
Right.
things will come together. What will also happen is that a lot of marginal stores will get shut down, and therefore what is expected is that what will remain in terms of the physical stores, or the physical chains,
Right.
they will be a lot more stronger players.
Correct. Correct.
Every physical person is getting into having an online play, and every online player is getting into having a physical tie-up.
Right.
So I
Right.
think
Yeah.
Omni is the way to go.
Sure. No, very interesting.